those words. That is, it looks for relationships between concepts and tries to understand the words that you use the way that another human might. So it's not just identifying the incidence of the words you're using on a given page. It's trying to understand what it is you're actually looking for and provide a result that matches that value as closely as possible. In a world where we are querying a search engine that has that kind of capability, we have to ask ourselves, what are some of the impacts? What are some of the behaviors and features that we see that are either enabled or developed on account of this? One of the things that's really interesting is that as the search engines have become smarter, the way that we interact with them has changed. One of those ways is that query length has gotten a lot longer. So we start seeing, instead of just word jumbles or short words such as men's shoes, we'd see something more like, what kinds of shoes should I wear to a cocktail party? Or what kinds of shoes are comfortable and formal and waterproof? Where those are the kinds of things that you're going to ask to another human rather than necessarily to a search engine. Our behaviors have begun to match up with that. We see that query length has gotten longer. We also see that it's getting longer in a specific way. There are a lot more questions being asked. And you can see this graph represents year over year growth. These trends have persisted for the last few years. When people are querying things, we see a lot of growth in the how does this work, or who is this person, or where can I go for some bit of information. People ask questions and they expect answers from the search engines to be similar to the way that we'd talk to another human. And the thing that's interesting is that starting around the same time as Hummingbird, we began seeing the incidence of these featured snippets. So featured snippets are Hummingbird's effort to answer those questions. Now imagine this. We see in this search result that when I say how to open a checking account, it says that there are 10,500,000 results. However, we also see that there's a featured snippet. That means that the search engine feels confident that from amongst those 10.5 million results, it has one result or one statement from amongst those results that it thinks it can answer that question correctly. You can do this with things like, how tall is the Statue of Liberty? Or how far away is the moon? Things like that have a known value. So where the search engine feels confident that it has a known value or a known answer, it will attempt to answer it with a featured snippet. So we also know that the people also ask box represents other featured snippets. So here, Hummingbird is not just taking a guess at what the correct answer to your question is, but it's also saying, here are other things that I understand to be related to the question that you asked. So the entity of checking account exists within a relationship map to things like free checking accounts and how to open a checking account and how to start your own bank. Maybe that's a little far off. But either way, there's some other questions that it perceives as being highly related to them. As we know, feature snippets, they show up in 3 different types: short answers, lists, and tables. It's really interesting to see the proliferation of feature snippets and what it implies about the search engine's willingness to answer questions that it thinks it knows. Feature snippets are not generated only by the first result. Some people will look at that and say, oh, that's just a summary of the first result. That's not true. It actually can be taken from any of the top 10 results, that it would be the first page results on a search engine result page. Highly weighted to the first, second, and third, obviously, but it can be technically taken from any portion of the top 10 results. It isn't the first paragraph. It isn't the last paragraph. It could be somewhere in the middle of any piece of content on that first page. This has had a pretty significant impact on the click-through rates. So if you can imagine, in a world where we ask questions a lot more and the search engine is just providing us answers, what compelling reason do we have to actually go and visit the page? So we can actually see some of this result here. On the left-hand side is mobile devices, and on the right-hand side are desktop devices. The gray areas represent where there is no click on the page. There's no click-through to a page. The orange represents the paid clicks, that is, somebody clicks on a paid ad, and the blue represents when they click on an organic result. So you can see, paid click-through rates are quite small, but that generates, tens of dozens of billions of dollars for the search engines. But on mobile devices, where the screen that you get to on a search engine result page after you ask a question has a feature snippet on it or a SERP feature, you tend not to click on it. So it is a significant change in terms of the competitive landscape where these feature snippets are. And guess what? They are a lot of places. So this represents the time frame sort of when featured snippets went from test mode to launch mode. So you can see that sort of in the February 2016 to March 2016 time frame, a big jump, and that continues to grow still. So more and more search queries are resulting in feature snippets as the search engine becomes more and more confident that it can answer the questions correctly. Here's another graph just to kind of show you the similar sort of thing, that it's not just a sampling error. Indeed, we see feature snippets becoming quite prolific over that period. So here's why you want to pay attention to feature snippets and what they represent as an opportunity. One, as mobile searches become more and more prominent, as they outpace desktop searches, you can imagine that the feature snippet takes up more of that screen real estate. So if you have a lot of users that are on mobile devices and you've been ranking pretty well, guess what? If feature snippets start showing up in words that you rank for, it's possible that you won't even be visible, quote unquote, on the screen anymore, because the feature snippet's going to take up a lot of that screen space. The other is that feature snippets currently are what is delivered to many voice queries. So when you ask your Google Home or your Alexa, your personal assistant, how far is it to the moon, or how tall is the Eiffel Tower, or what actor or actress was in, whatever movie. It's just reading featured snippets. So you can actually run the same query on a desktop or mobile, and you will probably see the same result show up in a feature snippet as what the personal assistant is going to say. So currently, most of these personal assistants are just purely reading featured snippets when they're providing those kinds of informational results. And, it makes sense as to why they do that, because you're asking a question, so question format, that's highly related to feature snippets. You're looking for a short answer, feature snippets, they're just a couple of sentences or a list or a table. They want something you want an authoritative answer, right? So as a user, you want to say, how far is the moon? Well, tell me the right answer. Well, the search engine has high degree of confidence that they actually have the answer for it, and they're algorithmically generated. So that is, doesn't have to be somebody sitting there answering for you. The search engine can just search amongst pages and say that it has a high degree of confidence that the answer is correct. So very interesting, and pay attention to these aspects. They're enabled by some of the recent changes in search algorithms.